Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Just Say Guay. I'm your host, George Guay. Today, I have another guest on the show, and it is Kyle Draper, who has been on the show before 2 years ago, and he really gave me the confidence that I could bring guests on the show. Kyle is a reporter for NBC Sports Boston and works for the Boston Celtics. He also is on the halftime and postgame show for the Celtics, and we've really developed a really strong relationship over the past couple of years. I've developed a lot of questions on the Celtics and NBA free agency. Let's get him on the phone.
Hey, it's Kyle.
Hey, Kyle, this is George. How are you?
Good. What's up, George? How you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, definitely. I got you on speakerphone, so I know it's a bit different than the last time you came on, but we can make it work.
Okay. Yeah. Whatever you need, man.
Okay. How's your summer been so far?
Good, man. It's been busy. Just trying to get through summer league, and things will finally quiet down and settle down.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of noise around Taco in the summer league. I don't know if you saw the guy that took the charge from him last night, but.
What's his name? Brandon. What was his name? I forget his name, but no, he's a good player. That dude that took the charge.
Yeah, I would not have done that, but when you're trying to make a name for yourself when you're that young, you sometimes have to do that.
Exactly, that's good effort, man.
Yeah. So before we get into the questions, I have a lot of viewers at school who are from New York and Connecticut, and they don't really know much about the Celtics and who reports for them, kind of like you do. Could you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's Kyle Draper, host of Celtics Pregame and Postgame live on NBC Sports Boston. I'm also the fill-in play-by-play guy, and I do sideline reporting for the Celtics as well.
All right, awesome. So obviously we got to talk about the Celtics. Beginning of last season, we thought they would be probably at the top of the Eastern Conference in terms of how much raw talent they had. We thought Gordon Hayward would be, back to normal, but obviously it seems like it was more of a recovery season. Even though it didn't live up to expectations, what are some positive things that we can look forward to going into this season with the team?
Well, I think, there's definitely a new vibe around this Celtics team. Expectations clearly aren't as high. But, when you lose Kyrie and Al Horford, usually you take a major step back. I don't think the Celtics record-wise will take that far of a step back. In fact, you had a guy like Kemba Walker who, everybody in Charlotte and obviously in Connecticut, they rave about, in New York as well. He's a New Yorker. He's a leader. And so I think, there's an excitement around this team. Obviously with Kemba, I think people are expecting Jason Tatum and some of the other guys, Gordon Hayward, to take major leaps forward. And so, it's the expectations are different, are lower for this team, but I think the product on the floor will be more enjoyable, believe it or not. Clearly last season there were some issues with the guys on the floor. They just didn't fit. That's what Brad Stevens said the other day. And we saw that. I think, you'll see more of a fit from these guys, and I think they'll be back to playing, enjoyable basketball.
Yeah, I look forward to that too, because I think this team is going to sort of remind me of what it was like when Isaiah Thomas was here, in a way that it's going to be a very grinded out kind of games, as opposed to winning by talent. I'm definitely excited. I'm sure you are. So the biggest thing that happened in free agency behind Kawhi Leonard was that Kyrie and Kevin Durant, who just suffered an Achilles injury, they went to Brooklyn. Now, I remember at the All-Star break, there was a video of those two guys joking around and having a great time, and that really caused people, especially Chris Broussard and Stephen A. Smith, to think that these guys are definitely teaming up, and it definitely happened. What made you think that those guys decided to choose the Nets over the Knicks?
I think it's a chance to win now, and the organizational culture. Everything we're hearing from the Brooklyn Nets is that from top on down, it's a first-class organization. And I think the fact that Brooklyn made the playoffs last year. Their guys played hard. Kenny Atkinson has done a fantastic job, and I think a lot of people, last year didn't expect the Nets to be anything. But the fact that they've gotten better, despite not having any lottery picks, shows the commitment to winning that the organization has and the kind of organizational structure they have. I think Kevin Durant, in all honesty, really considered the New York Knicks. Like, in his mind, I think that he was considering the Knicks. But then you look at the organizational structure from the top one down, whether it's James Dolan and the way he runs things. And, I like, Steve Mills and, David Fizdale and some of the front office and head coaching. But when, you got a guy like James Dolan who's made some missteps as owner of the Knicks over the years, I think players are a little reluctant. And the fact that Kyrie wanted to go to Brooklyn, and Kyrie said it, and not many people picked up on it, but when he met with the media, this is during the season, and we was questioned about that video of him and Kevin Durant, one thing he said, he called Kevin Durant his best friend.
Yeah.
And I don't think that got that much play. And once I heard that, I thought, why wouldn't these guys want to play together? Why wouldn't we think that these guys have talked about playing together? And then, with the Knicks the way they are and Kyrie wanting to play for Brooklyn, to me, that it only made sense that those two guys would pair up and go to the Nets.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it seems like that this is the first, big-time player or players that the city of New York has had in a while since Patrick Ewing. Now, I find basketball kind of a funny sport compared to the others because so many guys want to go to New York and LA. It seems like that's a big destination. But you look at the other sports like baseball, Boston's a big drawing. You go to the NFL, the biggest superstar plays in Boston, Tom Brady. The guy right behind him, Aaron Rodgers, plays in Green Bay. And, those aren't the biggest markets. And you look at the National Hockey League, a lot of the stars play for Canadian teams or Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh or Ovechkin in Washington. Those aren't big markets. Why do you think basketball players value playing in the big markets so much compared to other sports?
Well, I think you got to look at, just the way those franchises operate. I don't think anybody is more in control of their career than basketball players. They're, acutely aware of the power that they have. You look at a sport like the NFL with, contracts not guaranteed. You don't see as much player movement. It's sort of like, ownership has the power. Whereas the players sort of dictate where they want to go. It's free agency. It's true free agency in the NBA. And, you're talking about mostly, mid-20s, single, multi-millionaires. And, when we talk about the hottest cities, it's LA and New York. And that's what makes the Knicks situation so incredible. You're in a free agent destination, a city where, you got these young millionaires, they want to play, but your organization is in such a disarray that they don't even, get a marquee free agent or even get meetings with these marquee free agents. I just think, the NBA players are acutely and more in tune to the power they have. And these guys are willing to leave money on the table. Think about it. Whether it's Kawhi or Durant, they could have made more money staying where they were.
In winning situations, too.
Yeah, and instead they wanted to go, where they felt like they would be happy. And so, it's a true free agency in the NBA. And I think if a lot of us had the choice to, pick where we worked at, if all things were equal, I bet a lot of people would pick some of these major market cities. I don't think people would choose Green Bay, let's say, or something like that, or Buffalo, New York, or wherever whatever city you want to throw out there.
Yeah, I agree about that. I haven't really thought about like that perspective. I just found it interesting how it works in other sports. So, obviously with the Celtics team this year, there was a lot that happened behind closed doors that not everyone knows about. I don't think they're going to open up about it, but I think one of the things that they struggled with was the fact that Kyrie was coming back from injury, and he kind of wanted to establish himself as the guy who was running the team, it seems like. And I think maybe the younger guys had a bit of a time adjusting to that because they went so far in the playoffs. and kind of figured it out without him. But if he goes to Brooklyn and, KD's out for a year, it's going to be Kyrie's team this year. But I'm kind of confused if he wants that so bad to have his own team. It seems like when Kevin Durant comes back, don't you think that's going to be Kevin Durant's team?
Yeah, but I don't think that desire to have his own team is as great as it once was. I think he learned in Boston that, you know what, being the sole lone superstar is not all it's cracked up to be. And so, and you also have to look at Kyrie didn't choose Boston. Going to the Nets was the first time he's actually was able to choose the team and exercise his free agency. And, like I said before, he's mentioned how Kevin Durant is his best friend. And so I don't think he'll have as much of a problem. I think he comes in knowing the hierarchy there. His Brooklyn Nets teammates know the hierarchy there. And so even though they did well in making it to the playoffs in the first round this year without him, they know the kind of player he is. And so I just think it was a weird situation. And, you talk about the Celtics. Let's not all put it on Kyrie. We got to throw some on Gordon Hayward coming back also. I think that was an issue in that locker room as well. You got so many players trying to prove themselves and make their mark in the league that, nobody was willing to sacrifice or accept their role. And so I don't want to put it all on Kyrie in Boston. There were other factors. Terry Rozier, he felt like he was the man. Everybody on that Celtics team felt like they could do more. They should be featured. And, there was no pecking order.
Yeah, it seems like that run to these finals in Game 7 and just going to being minutes away from going to the finals was seems like it was a blessing and a curse for those young guys. They got to grow up a bit faster, but it seems like that it definitely affected them next season. But
yeah, George, you must not have been watching my shows. I've been saying that all season long, man.
So I'm going to tell you this.
But it created some monsters. It created guys who, like I said, thought they could be the man or lead their team. And so nobody wanted to sacrifice their games when Gordon Hayward and Kyrie came back.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think that – so in my opinion, I believe this, that if the Knicks were to get any free agents, I know their best free agent was Julius Randle, no disrespect to him, but he's not a box office kind of player. Do you think once the domino that they weren't getting Zion Williamson fell down, do you think that really caused an effect on the free agents coming? Like, do you think if the Knicks got Zion, they would have gotten another free agent?
Maybe they would have, but not only Zion. Think about it. If they would have gotten a top 2 pick, like if let's say the Pelicans didn't get number 1 and didn't have Zion, let's say, and the Knicks got 1 or 2, they may be able to enter into the Anthony Davis sweepstakes.
Yeah, he wanted to go there. He definitely wanted to go there.
Yeah, once the Pelicans got number 1 and the Knicks got 3, it sort of, it sort of hurt them a little bit, because if you get Zion, maybe you could attract other guys. Maybe, I don't know if they would have done it, but maybe they think about trading that number 1 pick to New Orleans for Anthony Davis. And so then you get Anthony Davis in New York. Maybe you get a Kevin Durant. Maybe you get a Kawhi Leonard. Maybe you get a Jimmy Butler or somebody like that compared with Davis. I think, the draft hurt them a little bit. As much as I like R.J. Barrett as a player, I think, not getting one of those top 2 picks and the fact that New Orleans got number 1, I think that changed a lot.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely seemed like a big drop-off after 3, in my opinion, compared to previous year's draft. So you talked about Gordon Hayward, how it was an awkward situation for him coming back this year after that devastating injury. Now that Kyrie and Horford are gone, I know that Tatum and Jalen are veterans technically because they've been in the league for 2 or 3 years, but it seems like it's going to be Gordon Hayward and Kemba leading the team because they're the veterans. That's what you think. So what are your expectations for Gordon Hayward this season after having a year of recovery under his belt?
I mean, you listen to the coaches, they're talking about how he's, in the gym every day at 6 a.m. working hard, and people like to compare his injury to Paul George's injury as well. I think, I am expecting a better Gordon Hayward. I just want to see the consistency, George. I don't need 25-point per game Gordon Hayward. I don't need Utah Gordon Hayward. What I do need is Hayward to score 20 one night and then back it up with 17 the next, or 18 the next, or 22. Not like he did this past season where one night he scored 30, the next night he scored 4. So I think we'll see a more consistent Gordon Hayward, a more explosive Gordon Hayward. You know, if we're talking numbers, I'm looking at 18 to 20 points per game for Gordon Hayward this season. If he gives them that, this Celtics team will be tough to beat because Kemba, we know Kemba's going to do his thing. He's going to be a 20-plus point per game scorer. I feel like Gordon Hayward and Jason Tatum, they have to be the guys that really elevate their game if the Celtics want to be serious contenders in the East.
Yeah, absolutely with Gordon. They do definitely have two different injuries. I think, you know, you watch that series itself, I think we just need how he played against Indiana and we'll be fine.
Yeah, he was solid in Indiana, but even, you know, when you look closer at that series, Game 4, he was good. I thought he could have been better. You know, I thought we were grading Gordon Hayward on the curve, you know, in that series. And I still want to see All-Star Gordon Hayward. But he played well in the Indiana series, but then disappeared in Milwaukee, obviously. But I want to see even more than that. I don't just want to see Indiana series because I thought there were a couple of games in that series, once again, where he was a non-factor. You know, I need Gordon Hayward to be a factor every night. I need to know Gordon Hayward's out on the floor every single night.
Yeah, hopefully those 6 a.m. lifts and getting on the court will pay off. I'm sure they will. You spoke about Kemba Walker. What I loved about this guy was he was in Charlotte and he, you know, had Michael Jordan on him every day, but he never ever complained about not having enough talent around him. You know, how some of these players, they don't say it directly, but you can tell they just look, I need more help. You never heard that out of Kemba, and now Kemba's got a good supporting cast. Do you think that was the deciding factor that drew him to Boston?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, a chance to win and compete, you know, and have a legitimate shot in the postseason. He's made the playoffs before, but let's be honest, those Charlotte teams weren't really expected to do much. And I think now he comes with more expectations to a franchise that, you know, has legitimate, at least second round of the playoffs, maybe even Eastern Conference Finals expectations. And so I think, you know, a chance to be in a winning program, a winning environment, you know, obviously closer to home, closer to UConn where he started. I think he's an East Coast kind of guy. And so I think all that went into it. But I think when you look at the Hornets roster and the way it's constructed, he realized, you know what, it's going to be a while before this franchise is able to compete for a championship. And I don't want to waste the best years of my career, the prime years of my career, you know, just battling for a 7 or 8 seed. I want to go and actually be a factor in the playoffs. And I think that's why he chose Boston.
Yeah, I think that kind of, you know, is what made Al Horford happy to come here, and same with Kemba Walker. Now, I mean, I've been watching too much First Take and Undisputed and The Herd, and they're all saying that Kemba is a sort of lesser version than Kyrie, but sort of the same type of player. What do you think he can bring to the Celtics that Kyrie did not?
Well, I think, first of all, what he'll bring is he won't have that, you know, heavy blanket over the locker room. Like, Kyrie was such a big presence that, and Terry Rozier mentioned this during the season, that the team sort of went how Kyrie did emotionally. You know, if Kyrie's in a good mood, everything was fine. But if Kyrie was sort of in a bad mood, it sort of infected his team. From everything we hear about Kemba, you know, he's always been a positive guy, upbeat guy. You know, in terms of their play on the floor, you know, Kemba's more ball dominant than Kyrie, believe it or not. When you look at the statistics, the actual numbers, but Kemba had to be ball dominant in Charlotte. He didn't have anybody else. I'm interested to see if Kemba can maybe scale back some of his scoring, not score 25 a game, score 22, but up his assists to 8, 9 a game, something like that. And so I want to see Kemba as a team player. In Charlotte, he had to put up 30 points every night for that team to have a realistic chance to win. He's not going to have to do that in Boston. And so, you know what? If you lose Kyrie, Kemba Walker's not a bad fallback plan. So the Celtics got to be given credit for that. You know, everybody thought Kyrie's gone out, this franchise is in a bad spot. Then they go out and sign Kemba, and they'll still be a factor in the East.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can't go wrong that he has a lot of wing players to dish to, like Jalen, Gordon, and Tatum. So, obviously, I don't know how you felt, but I was very happy with this free agency in terms of if you're an unbiased NBA fan, like we just love the game because I thought this was the biggest free agency since LeBron went to Miami with Bosh and formed with Wade. And that really swung the league in a way where, those guys, other than the Celtics, could walk through the East and get to the finals. Are you happier that it seems like it's a more balanced league this year?
Yeah, I mean, you got legitimately 8 to 10 teams that really think they can win the NBA championship, can really stake a claim that they are NBA championship contenders. And so I think I read a stat where 40% of the league were free agents this offseason. That's crazy.
Yeah, I saw that too. It's wild.
Yeah, you saw that? And
yeah.
So it was awesome. A lot of people may hate this player movement, but think about it. This is why the NBA has gotten so popular, has turned into a year-round sport, right? It's, we talk about the trades. We talk about where, Kevin Durant's going to play next season, where Kyrie's going to go, where's Kawhi. Those are, conversations that really, bring in interest in the league and keep the league at the forefront. I mean, we saw here recently, NBA free agency dominated at a point where, the MLB All-Star game, was rarely talked about on a national level. I think, so the NBA, I think is second to the NFL now when it comes to being a year-round league. So I love it.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw another stat. It said there was like at least $2.5 billion spent on the first day.
Yeah, crazy numbers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at
that's buying a team.
Damian Lillard got out there in Portland, $250 million. I mean, it's silly money,
yeah.
But clearly these guys, put butts in the seats. They make these owners a lot of money. So it's a good time for the NBA, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think the West is going to be good. I think the East is going to be good. Definitely the Sixers are going to be one of those teams that's going to be a lockdown defensive team. So speaking of lockdown defense, you got Kawhi Leonard leaving Toronto, who's arguably the best two-way player in the game right now. And he's bringing Paul George, who isn't far behind him as one of the best two-way players in the game. So that leaves Russell Westbrook alone. And I can't blame him for expecting a trade to happen because who'd want to tank with that team and being in that city. So with his days being numbered, where do you see him going? And do you think this is the end of guys playing their whole career with one team, kind of like Kobe and Tim Duncan and, Larry Bird, stuff like that?
I think, it depends on where you're drafted to, right? I think, if you're drafted to one of the premier organizations, whether it's the Celtics or the Lakers, and you actually come into a winning situation and they surround you with winning talent, I do think players will stay. But, these players are so much more in tune with their legacies and how important winning is that, you know what? If they see that they can't win where they're at, they'll go to another situation, a better situation to win. And so I think the onus is on these teams now to surround these players with talent. And so whether that's in LA or, Sacramento, wherever, it's on these GMs and president of basketball operations to surround their players with talent. As far as the Eastern Conference goes, you look at Kawhi leaving, it opens up the door for other teams now. Milwaukee's going to be there. Philly, I love the moves the Sixers made. The Celtics. How about the Pacers? They may be the most underreported team out there. They made some great offseason moves. And so, like I said before, this was a great offseason. I think free agency, like you said earlier, created more competitive balance around the league. And so it's going to be great.
Yeah, it should be a good season because I think for the first time, in a while since, the Warriors were formed, even LeBron with the Heat. I always go back to 2009. You don't necessarily know who's going to win because, I've been a diehard basketball fan my whole life, and I think the best year when there was basketball was 2009 when you had the Celtics coming out the title, the Lakers could win, the Spurs, the Suns, the Rockets. You had the Magic, the Pistons were still around. Derrick Rose was just a rookie, and I feel like we kind of have that again, don't you think?
No, I agree. And like I said, you got like 10 teams, and I know you asked me about Westbrook earlier. What if he goes to Miami, which I think, would be a great situation. I don't know how the Heat pull it off because I don't think they have the draft picks to do it. But he goes to Miami, you got to throw Miami in the mix now with him and Jimmy Butler as a possible championship contender. If I'm the Knicks, I'm making a call to Sam Presti. I'm trying to get Russell Westbrook to New York. As you get Westbrook, maybe you add another piece next year with him. And so there's so much player movement, and you're right about it being in 2009, where so many teams, whether it was San Antonio or Cleveland that year, the Lakers, the Celtics, so many teams can say that, what, we actually have a shot this year to win a title.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of champions, this year, the Raptors won. Who knows what would have happened if they didn't get that bounce in the East semis against the Sixers, which kind of broke the internet. But the Raptors didn't have a single lottery pick in their roster this year, and that's the first time that's ever happened. And there are a bunch of star players who didn't go in the top five. You got Giannis, Kawhi, Steph Curry, Paul George, Draymond Green. Do you think that should give teams hope that, hey, we could win a championship even if we're picking, 15th or 20th or something like that?
Well, I've always said, when it comes to the draft and teams, to me it's more important to get the pick right than to get a top 3 or 4 pick. Think about it. You look at some of the picks that Cleveland has had over the years. Anthony Bennett. They got number 1.
Yeah, they could have.
And they took Anthony Bennett number 1. How crazy is that? So to me, it's more important to get the player right. We've seen Phoenix get lottery pick after lottery pick after lottery pick and still not have anything to show for it. I think they're finally trending in the right direction. I like some of the moves they've made. Sacramento, same way. They're finally trending. But look at Orlando. Orlando's had a number of high draft picks yet, but yet they still haven't been able to, become serious contenders. And so I think it's just important, your player evaluation department has to be on point. That's the most important thing. How many years have the San Antonio Spurs not had a lottery pick, but yet they've remained relevant in this? Even when Tim Duncan was on his way down, they find a way to get Kawhi Leonard from Indiana in that trade. And, even OKC, look at OKC's history of drafting. And so that's why I think, this Paul George trade is setting Oklahoma City up, to be contenders in 5 to 7 years because they've done such a great job at drafting. So I think it's on the player personnel departments to make the right picks, not necessarily go out there and just get a top 3 pick. Because like you said, the Steph Currys of the world, the Giannis's of the world, those guys weren't top 3 or top 4 picks. The Kawhi Leonards out there, Donovan Mitchell out in Utah, he wasn't a top 5 pick. And so you got a number of players who I think have proven to be all-star level talent that have come outside the top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. You never really know. And a different sport, but Tom Brady, going 199, you just never know what a guy can bring.
Exactly. It's just about getting the right guy, no matter how you get him. Whether it's first round, second round, lottery, whatever, you have to hit on the picks you make.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but it's always stuck with me because when LeBron came back, the team would have been even more stacked. But Cleveland the guy that went after Anthony Bennett was Victor Oladipo, who's probably going to be a top 10 player in a few years.
And some people, were like, Oladipo, why take him at number 2? Like, some people thought that was kind of high for him. But clearly, that was a good selection. So that's the thing. I don't buy into, you reached too high. Like, Russell Westbrook was the 4th overall pick. People were wondering, wow, Westbrook 4th overall? To me, Damian Lillard, for instance, number 5 overall out of Weber State. To me, it's all about getting the guy that you want. I don't care where the pick is, whether it's 1 or 20 or whatever, getting your guy. And we've seen teams do that.
Okay, so last question, and I'll give you my answer first and why. But obviously anything can happen overnight with injuries. We saw what happened with Golden State. But my finals prediction, I'm going with Philly versus the Clippers, and I'll tell you why. So I think with Philly, they just added the only guy who could guard Embiid in the East and put them on their team. And yes, they got rid of Jimmy Butler, but they have so many guys on that team that can score the ball, and they're going to lock. I think they're going to lock down so many people defensively. And the reason why I'm going with the Clippers, I think the Lakers have made more impressive moves in terms of stacking the roster. But I think two things. I think Kawhi Leonard, just with Paul George, is enough because I think he's shown he can win. Yes, he had Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker, but they were really on the back end. And he didn't have a superstar next to him. He had Kyle Lowry, who's an all-star, but not a superstar. And regarding the Lakers, I don't think those management problems just end overnight. So that's why I was thinking that they're not going to go to the finals.
I like the moves the Lakers made, though. I think it's between the Clippers and the Lakers out there in the West in terms of, coming out because I think Denver, believe it or not, will probably have the best record regular season-wise out of any of those teams. But I think LeBron James is going to be on a tear this season. He's going to be on a mission. People have, some people out there don't even consider him a top 5 player in the league anymore, which is laughable. So I'm expecting like elite level LeBron, but then you got elite level Kawhi also. And so I think it's down to the Clippers and Lakers out west. And I do like your Philadelphia. Okay, don't sleep on Milwaukee because, they'll be back, but I think the loss of Brogdon will hurt them. But you're right. Not only did they get a guy that can defend Embiid and Al Horford, but a guy that, has done an okay job against Giannis as well, against the Greek Freak. And so I love the moves the Sixers made. Now, if they had a guy like a Kyle Korver or somebody like that takes them to another level. But, I agree sort of with your case. I'm not going to rip you for that, George, or anything like that. Those are solid selections, but I guess my sleeper team would be the Denver Nuggets. I think their continuity, they came close this past season. Jokic is an MVP candidate, and so the Nuggets, I think, will learn from this past season, and they'll be a hard out. But I do like the Lakers and Clippers out west.
Yeah, I do agree LeBron's going to be on a tear this year. I just always think that I know it hasn't happened with Tom Brady. I just think, each year he gets older. And yes, he had the rest this offseason. We'll see how he pairs with Anthony Davis, but I think the X factor on that team is actually Boogie Cousins because I think what you're going to get out of LeBron. You're going to get 26, 27, 8-5 or 8-8. Boogie Cousins got doubted this year again by not having any market for him. I think he's making like $2.5 million. But I think if he can play better than he did in Golden State, then I'll say the Lakers are the favorite.
Yeah, I think Boogie will play better. I mean, he's another season past that injury, that Achilles injury. So I expect him to be better. And you're right, he could be an X factor. I like some of the moves, like we said. I like the Avery Bradley. I like bringing back Rondo. Kuzma's a very good player as well. And so all these people that wrote the Lakers off because they didn't get Kawhi or a big-name free agent, think again. I think this Lakers team will be very competitive. I mean, but you got about 5 or 6 teams out west that are going to be hard out come playoff time. And so I was joking with some of the people over at NBC Sports Boston the other day. Why do we have to wait till October for the NBA season to begin? Let's go right now. I'm ready, man.
Absolutely.
It's so exciting, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think in terms of MVP this year, I remember when I went and showed you my picks, and I only got one right for the awards, and I did get Giannis, but I'm definitely going to roll with Kawhi Leonard this year. I think him being in LA, and yes, it's a bigger market, but I think it seems like it's a bit less pressure than putting on a Laker uniform, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but, the key with him, and the same thing with how many games is he going to play? Is he going to play 60 games again? Is he going to play closer to 70?
That's
I think
true.
Kawhi's in the mix. Maybe it's his time. I think LeBron's in the mix. Like I said, I fully expect a bounce back year from LeBron. And I think that's the thing that's crazy. He had a great season statistically, but I think he's going to go out there and try to remind people just how good he is.
Yeah, and I think in the NBA, before we go, I think the best thing to watch this year is going to be Joel Embiid. I think that because he's going to either respond to that buzzer beater shot one of two ways, and I wouldn't sleep on him being an MVP contender either.
No, I agree with you. I mean, he was in a conversation for most of the year this past year, and then obviously Kawhi and Harden and Giannis Those guys, Paul George, they've got most of the headlines down the stretch, but I expect Embiid, that loss to Toronto, he was crushed by that. And so it'll be interesting to see how he comes back from that. Is he coming back hungrier, wanting to be more dominant? And you're right. The Sixers are going to be in the running for best record in the league. And you got to think Embiid's going to be a big reason. So he's going to be in the MVP conversation too.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't come back too good because the Celtics need to beat him. But,
exactly. I can't wait, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the season. Kyle, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure I'll see you at a game soon.
All right, George. Thanks for everything, man.
Yep, have a good one.
All right.
That's it, everyone. Thank you for watching another episode of Just Say Guay with Kyle Draper. I'm George Guay. Have a good one. And as always, just say Guay.